So I don't want that type of life. I never enjoy. And I wear a Timex, not a Rolex. I carry a Muji bag instead of a Tumi bag. I realized that success is number one, how interesting is your life? Not necessarily using money. Life can be interesting when you try something difficult and achieve success, overcoming your fear. Another part of success is, are you helping people? Are people's life better because of you? If nobody's life is better because of you, or even worse, you're making the hell of other people's life, then you're not successful. Yeah. So that's my definition.
Hi everyone, welcome to APCDA Podcast Season 6 on the mic with thought leaders. Today is episode number 3 and with us today is Mr. Eric Sim. So with over 2 million followers on LinkedIn, Eric Sim, CFA, he's one of the most followed financial profession on social media globally. He is also an author of Small Action, Leading Your Career to Big Success. So from an engineer to a banker and now an author and lecturer, Eric has made major transition in his career. So I'd like to invite Eric onto the virtual stage to walk us through some of these defining chapters of your journey. Eric, please.
Thanks for having me, Samantha and Michael. I'm very glad to be here. When I planned out my life, I wanted to have as many experiences as possible. And I thought having just one career is going to be less interesting. And I also have a lot of weaknesses that I like to overcome. So I did my bachelor in engineering at the National University of Singapore. I went for my internship at a power plant. It's a coal-fired power plant. Not very environmentally friendly. Said, do I want to work in this environment? It's not good for my health and maybe I should look for something else. So I said, how about trying banking and finance? And very lucky, I told one holiday job story to the interviewer and she gave me the job without me having any knowledge in banking finance, without any degree. I didn't even know what foreign exchange is. And at that point, I have not even heard of Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. Yeah. So fast forward, I did banking for 20 years. Halfway through, I thought, since I enjoy teaching, training, why don't I give some internal trainings to my colleagues? And I took those case study and examples to go to university to offer my teaching, and professors like it. And I was given an adjunct associate professor title to teach banking and finance. So I was working as a banker in the day, in the night, in the evening, sometimes weekends, I was a teacher. That's what my boss was thinking. Actually, I was teaching more than my banking role because after class, students were asking me questions, not just about banking finance, also about career. So the next thing I wanted to try is, how about writing? I failed my English in school. Maybe it's a good time to improve my writing. And 2 years before I left UBS investment bank, I started writing on LinkedIn. The objective is to share my career advice with students because I can't really find time to answer one by one. So I say, I'll write on LinkedIn, you guys go, and then if you've got further questions, you can ask me. So that started. And that was quite a good boost for my confidence. I realized that you don't need perfect English. All you need is a good story that has professional application to the readers. Then I became a blogger. I quit banking, continue teaching, continue writing. I said, okay, I've written now. Why not publish a book? So I took my LinkedIn articles, compiled them, sort them out, and published a book called Small Action, which Samantha, you mentioned. Now, there is one more thing which scares me, that is public speaking. It's one of the biggest fear in the United States. Michael, I'm not sure whether you heard of this. It is more scary than drowning.
Yeah, the fear of death, right? Fear of death is second after public speaking.
Yeah. So when you're invited to give a eulogy, you'd rather be the person in the coffin than to be the one speaking. So I said, let me try. And I became a speaker. So now I speak professionally around the world. So in terms of career, so I was an engineer, turned a banker, turned a teacher, author, and speaker. Occasionally, I coach as well, but I don't take in that many coaching clients now because I find that I need my time for myself. I want to travel. I want to come on podcasts like this with you, Samantha and Michael. And I also want to do things that interest me. I want to explore other things like design, making artwork.
Thank you, Eric. Michael, Eric really embodies the definition of career, don't you think so?
I think so, yeah. In previous episodes, maybe you've heard of this definition, Eric, around career as being really a constellation of life roles, not just paid roles, but also unpaid roles. And I think it includes vocational interests, but also avocational interests, right? So things or activities that you might do for fun to challenge yourself. And certainly your narrative is filled with chapters, right? If we look at this from a narrative where you've challenged yourself in new and different ways. I had a follow-up question on that. Looking back on your trajectory and the stories that you told and these different roles that you've occupied, what assumptions about success have changed for you? Obviously, you're a very successful person. The book, the LinkedIn, the public appearances. I'm wondering how assumptions about success may have been altered over time for you.
When I was in banking, success means buying a bigger watch,
okay,
a more exotic car, and building wine cellar in your house. That after a while, in fact, after a very short time, I realized that it doesn't give you joy. If you buy a nicer car, you're happy for a few months. After that, you're afraid that somebody might scratch your car. And somebody who spent few $100,000 renovating or buying houses that cost tens of millions of dollars, they are always trying to invite their friends to come for housewarming. I said, after 5 years, you are still doing housewarming. It's ridiculous. So I don't want that type of life. I never enjoy. And I wear a Timex, not a Rolex. I carry a Muji bag instead of a Tumi bag. I realized that success is, number one, how interesting is your life? Not necessarily using money. Life can be interesting when you try something difficult and achieve success, overcoming your fear. Another part of success is, are you helping people? Are people's life better because of you? If nobody's life is better because of you, or even worse, you're making the hell of other people's life, then you're not successful. Yeah. So that's my definition.
Thank you. Samantha, did you have a follow-up question for Eric, or should we move on to the next set of questions that we have?
I'm just moving over Eric's definition of success right now, like how interesting your life is, how trying something different, and it caught me reflecting of my own and thinking whether is my life interesting. Yeah, and I came across the article that was featured November last year on Business Insider, and he also was interviewed for that, right? At which point do you realize that your identity was actually bigger than your job title?
Yeah, I never think in that way, like job title or identity. I don't think of myself as I'm trying to build an identity. I do all these different jobs for myself, for the fun of it. I don't think people care how many jobs I do. When they interact with me, it's only in one specific capacity. A book reader is interacting with me in my capacity as an author. My students in the university classroom interact with me in my capacity as a professor. So I don't think they really care. But for me, it's really interesting to be able to do all these different jobs and try to combine them. It means when I teach, I will ask the students, if you like, you can follow me on LinkedIn because I write about the same topic, which is about career. You may not remember everything I say in class, but you can read them on LinkedIn and you can network with my fellow connection. They could be in the industry that you are most interested in. They could be in banking, consulting, they could be professors from other universities. And my book is the reference book for my course. And when I teach, I share experiences from my banking days, how I lost the deal and how I win over customers and recover the deals. So I make the lesson more applicable so that they can imagine if they were in the same situation, how are they going to deal with people? So that's how I think of things, not really about job title or identity. However, if I look back when I'm 80 years old, right? If I look back, do I want my life to, the best part of my life is just MD at UBS Investment Bank. Is that it? No, I think that is not interesting enough. If I look back, I want to say, I've traveled to Chicago to give a talk. I have met my followers in Istanbul. I've done book signing in Abu Dhabi, and my books are translated into various languages, Chinese, Bahasa Indonesia, and next year will be in Arabic. So that's what I like to think about when I'm 80, because when you're 80, chances are you are not so mobile. So you rely on memories to live the rest of your life. And what memories do I have? And you notice some old people, they keep talking about the same few stories because they haven't collected many stories. They haven't tried many things enough. That's why it's only that same few stories. And I hope when I'm 80, I have got countless stories to share. And I hope I can still go on podcasts.
I'm sure you will. And actually, I'm very aligned with you on this. I always believe in creating moments, creating experience with not just myself, but with the people around me and also with people around me that I care and I love. So I am very, very aligned with you. And fulfilling dreams is probably one of the things that I'm embarking on right now with my loved ones. So, but there's so many transition that you went through, and a lot of times transition can come across as very uncomfortable and very risky. So I'm very curious what will be 2 or 3 qualities that guided you well that some of our listeners can take away or even take away to support their clients.
Yeah, number one is I take small actions consistently. It's difficult to do something big. Doing an MBA that costs 200,000-300,000, that's a big decision. So I don't do things like that. I will reach out to a person, write one article. So these small actions consistently, that's number one. Number two is to accept my own failures and weaknesses and be open about it so that people can learn. Number three is to be the same person online and offline, and rather than trying to paint a persona. So these are the three guiding principles. Yeah, being honest online is also important, and not just show the best life that you have. I don't think people can learn from just your successes. People should also learn from your failures, the challenges you face. And just now you talk about risky transition. There's one part when I left investment banking to do my own, it was a bit risky, or maybe uncomfortable is more accurate word. I no longer have my personal assistant to book the flights for me. I need to book the flights myself, and then now I'm paying on my own. I'm thinking, if I fly direct, it's too expensive. So can I fly from Singapore to Dubai and transit? And then if I'm going to Cambridge to give a talk, can I make use of it? And then maybe I drop by Madrid before I fly. And that takes a few hours just for booking flight. It's something that I don't usually do in the past. And things like that takes up your time. And yeah, I've taken for granted my life where someone will book a limousine for me to pick me up from home to the airport. And when I land, there's another car waiting for me. And this car will follow me for the next 3 days. And those comforts are gone. It's not risky. It's just that it takes time to get used to my new life.
Thank you, Eric, for
Really?
sharing so openly. I think Michael bought your book before the podcast and he read it. Michael, do you have any questions for
Yeah.
Eric?
I do. Before we talk specifically about some of the lessons from the book, Eric, I really appreciated all 3 steps that you shared with us and the listeners. But in particular, the first one, I think, really resonates with me, and maybe others would agree, about just the value of taking small actions and doing that regularly, right? It's sort of this idea of small wins. You've heard of that concept as well. And
Yes.
finding value and a sense of accomplishment in something that might be perceived as small, but possibly leading to something bigger. And I think about that with some of my own students, especially new undergrads or even graduate students, where it might take them 4 years, or some doctoral students maybe even be in the program 6 or 7 years. And it's easy, I think, to get overwhelmed if you're looking at that long, arduous journey. But I encourage them to break it up into smaller steps, smaller milestones, and then celebrate each of those milestones as they move forward to this larger goal. So I think that really that hits with a lot of our listeners. So thank you.
Yeah. Say, for example, if you want to write a book, if it's published by a well-known or a reputable publisher, you will be asked to write 70,000 words, around there. 70,000 words that translate to about 260 pages. It's very daunting. So what I do is, I say, my book, I'm going to write small chapters. In my first book, Small Action, the one that you read, is 66 chapters. So I write down 66 chapter titles before I start writing the book. So 1 week, 1 chapter. That's doable, right?
Yeah.
And 1 chapter is 1,000 words. So I say, don't think about 70,000 words. Don't think about 260 pages. Just think about 1 LinkedIn article a week. And as the week passes, then you got some motivation. Okay, I'm now done 33, so I've left 33 to go. I've done 50, then fewer and fewer left to do. So that's how I conquer a lot of the big projects in my life.
I like that, especially as it relates to writing. Samantha, I don't know if you have similar experiences, but I think many of us feel like the writing process can be a little bit overwhelming, right? And so I like this idea of starting with the chapter titles and seeing it as a LinkedIn post rather than this lengthy chapter that you have to accomplish.
Yeah, that's how I wrote Small Actions.
Excellent. I want to talk a little bit more about small actions, and I have a copy of your book next to me. The question that I had for you is that I teach undergraduate students, university students, around career issues and career preparation. And one of the lessons that I used in class, and I think it was successful, at least that's what the students told me, was this idea about being a combo specialist. And I had students use one of the local fast food restaurants here that they have fast food chicken, like fried chicken. And so I use that as an example of the combo specialist. But for those of the listeners that might not be familiar with this concept, I wonder if you could just briefly tell us a little bit about that concept and how you conceptualized it.
Sure. So this appeared in chapter 1 of the book. A lot of students ask me whether is it better to be a generalist or to be a specialist. I say don't be either. If you are a generalist, you can be replaced easily because you got no specialty. If you are a one-dimensional specialist, you can be displaced when your industry get disrupted, like today with AI. So I say, be a combo specialist. And if you've been to a fast food restaurant, usually they offer you a combo meal. The burger is your core specialization. The fries is your secondary specialization. And the drink, maybe a Coke, is your interest. And if you can combine these three and present yourself as a combo specialist, number one, you are unique. Number two, you are more adaptable. And number three, this combo is not cast in stone. Every few years, you will change. Like for me, I started with an engineering degree for my undergrad, and I went into finance. After a few years, I combined finance and engineering to do financial engineering. I combined my interest in street food to talk to customers, to build relationship with customers. I use my interest in math, in photography, to make my lesson more interesting. Because sometimes if you just talk purely about work, the relationship is difficult to break through beyond professional. And sometimes you want to go a little bit personal in order to convince the client to give you the transaction. So this is a combo specialist. I'll give you a few more of my example, then the audience can think about your own example. So one of my combo was financial engineering. That's my burger. And I lack social skills. So I asked my boss, can you let me do a bit of selling? Can you let me follow the salesperson to see the customer so I can learn? So that became my secondary specialization, my fries. And my Coke at that time was LinkedIn writing. That was my interest. So I'm combining all three. This financial engineering, LinkedIn, at the same time a bit about sales, and then you make yourself a bit different from other bankers. And when I write, I also can write about my banking experience.
Yeah, I love that idea of trying to identify the different features of the combo specialist, knowing that you're not a specialist, but you're not also a generalist. And depending on the context or the situation, you can apply those different skills accordingly, right, to the task or to what you might be exploring at that point. And I know that you mentioned AI briefly at the beginning of this response, Eric, and I'm wondering, a lot has changed in that landscape as well as across other industries, probably since the book came out a few years ago. I'm wondering if you were to write, I don't know if you have thoughts about a second edition or sort of amendment to the next version, but if you were to do that, what has changed significantly around this concept that if you were to rewrite this chapter, might you include or exclude now?
No, I would include AI in the combo. And the AI or AI-related skill. So who will thrive during this AI era? One, creating apps, application, products for other users. So just using ChatGPT to write LinkedIn is not an AI skill, right? That is like using calculator. It doesn't give you any advantage. The advantage is you are able to use AI. For example, I created an AI twin of me. So this AI twin is able to answer career question based on my book. It's better than me because it's available 24/7. It's able to pick up different chapters of the book to answer. Because if you ask me, I cannot quote you all the example in the book, but the AI can. So that is one skill that can be included in the combo. The other skills to include in the combo are skills that AI cannot do. For example, persuading and convincing people, building relationship with people, building rapport. If you imagine, if you are to sell airplanes, whether you're Boeing or Airbus, who makes more money? The person servicing the aircraft or the person selling the aircraft? The person servicing the aircraft has very deep technical knowledge. Otherwise, you cannot service an aircraft, right? The person selling the aircraft may not have as much technical knowledge, but is able to win the client over because one aircraft costs hundreds of millions of dollars. You need to know the client, not just the product. In fact, going forward, the client using AI will know the product as much as you do. Yeah. So in the combo, I would include maybe selling skills, maybe a role that involves people, or otherwise you are able to create an AI twin of yourself.
That's helpful. I have one additional thought to that, Eric, a response, and then I want to hear what Samantha thinks about this combo specialist idea as well. When I'm talking to some of my students, we do talk about AI, but we also talk about what can humans, new graduates, for example, do that AI can't do, knowing there's limitations of AI. And I think part of the combos that I push students to think about is areas of empathy, creativity, interpersonal skills, right? This cognitive awareness that can't be replicated by machines, at least ideally, not yet anyway. And so some of my students are wanting to go maybe into sales, but they're also wanting to maybe go into nonprofit work where they're maybe caring for others or demonstrating this sense of empathy for others. And I think that's going to be harder. Teaching, I think, falls under this category. So I think these are areas also to consider, especially for people that are thinking about their own combo specialists.
Yeah, and just now you mentioned teaching. AI can teach you the technical skills, but somehow cannot win the hearts of the students. Sometimes the students learn better if they can relate to the teacher. Could be the same content. You can watch a YouTube, but the absorption rate is not so high. And AI doesn't create this emotion with the students, whereas a teacher can. And just now you also talk about creativity. I also create artwork. Recently, I saw this. This is a can of sardine. It's one of the most common canned food. And I look at it, this is very ordinary. How can I make it extraordinary? I cut it into half, throw away the sardine, clean it up, paste it on a black cardboard, and frame it, and created an artwork that looks like this. Let me show you. So I want to tell the students, you may be ordinary now, but with the right framing, you will be able to become extraordinary. And this is, this is something that AI cannot do, right? To make a physical object.
I like that very much. When you mentioned about building rapport, it reminds me of an article I wrote, which is the smiling curve on the whole value chain. Where do you sit? And if you're able to create the kind of value that is harder to be replaced, that's where you can be more valuable in that sense. Yeah, but I also, on my stand on AI, I also believe that a lot of times when I work with my clients, some of the things that they will ask me is, Sam, how can I train my critical thinking skills? Because it's almost like a requirement in every job description, right? So my first reaction to them was very simple: stop using AI. Because I feel that a lot of people, they outsource their thinking, they outsource their critical thinking and creativity skills to AI rather than thinking on their own first and then ask AI to critique. So I think a very important aspect is also to learn how to use AI to support your growth.
And on critical thinking, number one is to set aside time to think. Because sometimes you're so busy, right? You go to work at night, you watch Netflix, and next day you repeat. There's no time to do deep thinking. So I go for a long walk, maybe an hour. I don't listen to music. I just think. And when I think, I try to connect two very different areas into one. And this can create new ideas. For example, I created just now that artwork. It's an artwork, but there's a lesson. So I use this as a prop in my class to tell the students, how can you be extraordinary, even you think that you are ordinary now. And because it's visual, they remember the lesson better. So that's one way of thinking to try to connect two things that are very different into one. The other areas that I combine is I used to help my father for 10 years at Singapore, the street food center, selling prawn noodles. Then I got investment banking. So these two are totally different worlds, right? But I'm applying the lesson that I learned helping my father: work ethics, integrity, hard work, able to observe client, able to remember the client's order and who comes in first. All that are very key into investment banking. And that creates some new ideas. And for critical thinking, it's also important to write it down. As you think, because our thinking are scattered, if you write it down, you get clarity. Once you get clarity, you build confidence. Because when you are clear with your thinking, you speak clearly, you can explain your ideas clearly. And when you can express things clearly, more people want to listen to you. As more people listen to you, you gain confidence. Yeah.
Thanks. I agree with the point about writing down or sometimes journaling down to gain that clarity because it allows us to formulate our thoughts clearly. Michael, I see that you are busy writing.
Yeah, I'm taking some notes here because I think I can apply it maybe to my own students and even to my own life and planning. I like this idea, Erica, of critical thinking and taking some time, whether it's a walk or through exercise, just to be with your own thoughts without music or without distraction. I think I'm guilty of this. Probably shouldn't say that we want everyone to listen to our podcast, right? But even just turning off Spotify or turning off my favorite podcasts.
Yeah.
When I go out for a walk, it's a different experience than if you're listening to music versus just being by yourself in your own sort of ruminations. And I think there's some benefit to having that alone time without distractions. And it sounds like for you, a lot of your creativity comes from that alone time. And I think others benefit as well.
Comes from that. It also comes from walk and talk.
Yeah.
So instead of meeting people for coffee or meal, I say, why don't you go for a walk? And when you walk, silence is not awkward. But when you're meeting somebody for lunch, silence is weird. So you try to fill that by talking. And also when you walk, you don't look at each other. You just look to the front.
Perfect for introverts.
Yes, perfect for introverts. And you also keep the extrovert a little bit quieter. And then you can absorb what the person say and start reflecting and how you apply to your life. And because there is no need to reply immediately.
I like that idea.
Indeed, yeah. It reminds me of the time whereby I crossed the desert over 4 days, 3 nights on foot, clocking 108 kilometers. So I was in the old Silk Road, it's part of the Gobi Desert. So it was one of the most transformative part of my life because even though in the desert there was no Wi-Fi connection, but I have the best connection with myself. So I can really relate to what Eric say when you're walking by yourself, you are sitting with your own thoughts, good or bad, or just being really honest with yourself. I think this is really therapeutic, if I may say. Yeah. And maybe that's a story for another day. We can do walks another day. But I'm also very curious because I'm also very impressed because one thing that Eric did that I noticed is while he has his book, he doesn't go on a typical book tour like sign book, and that's it. He actually convert his book tour into a food tour, walking tour, right? Bring people around, like wherever he is. It may not be just Singapore, but it could be in London or anywhere in the world. When he meet his followers or when he sign his books, right? You bring people around to taste the local delicacy. So
I asked people to bring me around. So when I landed in LA last year for the first time, before that I only been to New York and Washington, DC. I never tried California. So last year was the first time. The moment I land, I asked my host, Chris Mathieu, bring me to eat local food. And what's local food? Costco hot dog for $1.50, and they give you a free drink. Michael, you must have tried that
Yeah,
before.
but I don't know if I'd call that local food. Maybe not the best local food.
Yeah, but it was a good experience for me, Costco hot dogs. This is what I like to do when I visit a city.
yeah, I really admire and find this idea very impressive. So through all the connections and interaction with your readers, one thing I'm interested in gathering feedback from your readers. What are some of the ideas that your readers have implemented in their life and you have noticed that bring about positive change to them?
Yeah, there are readers who have taken action. They have written their first ever LinkedIn post. It's a major breakthrough. Sometimes when you started writing, you forgot how difficult it was to write the first one. But I am happy that they started, because since that's the most difficult and they did it and they will continue to do it. So that is one action they have taken. They have also learned a few things. One is to use props in job interviews, because I use a lot of props. Just now I showed you my studying artwork. One of my students or reader took a checkerboard to an internship interview. So when she was asked, what's your interest? She took out the checkerboard and talked about it. But the moment she took out, she from an introvert to now being so animated, because that is something that she plays very for a long time and very passionately. And also, it creates an impression to the interviewer. Why nobody brings a gadget or a toy to the interview, and you must be very serious about your interests. And that's what differentiates people. And I'm asking also my readers to develop interest. Don't just focus on work. So that is one. I also have the older readers, after reading, buying the books for their kids. I think that's the best endorsement for me. A parent, whether mother or father, after reading, think that this is good for the kids and passing it on. Yeah, those are the things that people do. There are also some readers who decided to share their weaknesses or failures more openly. And when they do that, they accept their past and then they move on. And also when they do that, they connect with people, because there are so few people out there who are willing to reveal their failures and weaknesses. So because one of my chapter is share your scar, not your wound. Your wound is something that you still feel hurt. Let's say you break up with your girlfriend or boyfriend. Maybe not a good idea to share, although it may attract a lot of eyeballs and engagement, but you may be hurt even more. However, it's something that you failed in school 10, 15 years ago is no longer affecting you. And feel free to share. Some people who's now suffering because of that, maybe can learn from the way you overcome that challenge.
Thank you, Eric. I really like the part about bringing props to internship interview. That is something that I can do immediately with my students. And sharing is caring. I share your book as well. I think one of the best gift is knowledge, so that the person probably can gain some wisdom and start applying. How about for you, Michael?
Yeah, I like that idea a lot, especially this idea around developing interests. I really appreciate that message, Eric, around shaping people and helping them and maybe nudging them to further hone and develop those interests. Sometimes I see that with my younger students. I work a lot with first year students, and you can see these sort of glimpses of interest and intrigue. And sometimes students just need a little push to develop those further. And sometimes it's taking additional courses in a certain area of interest. It might be getting involved with student organizations to foster those hobbies outside of academics. And so I think that idea of interest is really important. I also appreciated what you said earlier about sometimes the differences between introverts and extroverts. And you have a strong professional brand online with LinkedIn in particular, but probably other platforms as well. And you've worked on this over time, right? That you probably just didn't develop that overnight. And I think other professionals, other students, other listeners of this podcast might be comfortable with that approach, but I think there's many of us that struggle to share highlights or to maybe feel comfortable sharing our accolades or awards or whatever it might be more publicly. And so I'm wondering, first of all, your reaction to that. And then secondly, what mind shifts or mindset helped you become more visible sharing some of your work, your wisdom, and your subsequently your sort of awards and accolades in this area?
Yeah. Number one, there must be a purpose bigger than you. So if the purpose is to just attract attention, then maybe it's not such a good idea. But however, if you feel that your sharing is to help a certain group of people, then you will overcome the challenge because now you have a bigger purpose. My purpose is initially to help my students, later on to help early careers, and generally to help people. And when your purpose is to help people, is not to just share your achievement, is to share the lesson, is to share the difficulties and the challenges that you have faced in the past. If for people who are shy, number one is other than thinking of your purpose is take this as a way to journal. If you write one post a week, recording the highlight of your week. Highlight doesn't mean it's achievement. Highlight can be a difficulty that you have overcome. After 3 years, you would have 156 posts. And then you can recall what you have done. So I think it's quite nice. And on LinkedIn, you can see the images that you have posted. You can just glance through. So you didn't leave your life as if it's blank. After 3 years, when you review, there's nothing there because it's difficult to recall. But now you have recorded. That's one. Secondly, when you share, you also connect with people. So you build relationships. And relationship is super key these days. Number three, I think if you write, there another purpose is also to reflect, like what Samantha said. Yeah.
I appreciate your insights there. And certainly this idea relates back to the theme that we were talking about earlier about starting small, right? And so your idea here is writing one post per week, and then over time you accumulate a greater sort of body of contributions that you can look back on. I'm wondering, I think we've all been in this sort of experience, or we've witnessed this on LinkedIn in particular. I'll use that as an example, where some individuals it feels like they're being performative rather than actually helping people. And we've seen this kind of called the humble brag. Maybe you've heard that before. Yeah. It's like, so honored to have been part of this new book author team that was just published by XYZ, right? So it's like, see me, this is my new publication. And by the way, here's maybe a kernel of insights that come from it. So it sometimes comes off as what I would call performative personal branding. I think that's a term, Samantha, you've maybe used or talked about with your clients. how can you maybe differentiate the performative acts of sharing versus maybe the genuine acts?
Number one, intention. What is the intention behind? Two person can be talking about their achievement, but one, the intention is to show off. The other one, the intention is to celebrate. The one with the better intent, with the good intention of sharing, you can also see before that, he or she is also sharing the challenges before you became this team, part of this, say, author team. And number two is the person with the intention, chances are, will also share the lesson, not just the achievement. So if you share, okay, I am proud to be on this team, but how do you get there? What were the challenges? How do you join the team? How come you were invited? Was there a delay? Did the publisher say no to some of your requests? Share some of those as well. Or maybe you have tried to join such a team 5 times and this is the 5th time you got in. Share the other 4 times what happened. Then on the day you share your final achievement, it doesn't come across as performative. So because a lot of times the readers are also smart, they don't judge you based on one post. They judge you based on multiple posts. So if you have been sharing good lessons, the journey, the challenges, then you share your achievement, they will celebrate together with you. But if every post is, I'm happy to announce I'm speaking at this event, I'm proud that I'm promoted. If every single post is like that, forget it. I would say, please don't post. If every post is a selfie, I say, please don't post. Because sometimes the selfie has got nothing to do with your content.
I like that. And I think there's sometimes, and Samantha, I want to get your opinion on this too, but I think there's sometimes maybe it's more in academic spaces, but there's pressure, whether it's inherent or not, or intentional or not, to do those selfie posts, right? Like, here's what I'm working on. Here's my most recent product, whether it's a new article or a presentation at a conference. And it feels performative, like you're just trying to keep up with your colleagues who are doing similar work.
I've got one tip for that. Every 10 posts you post, one is allowed to be performative. You earn it, but not every other post.
I like that. Samantha, what are your thoughts on this whole topic of performative branding versus authentic branding?
I was just recollecting what Eric mentioned earlier on. He mentioned 3 points, right? Much earlier in the podcast, like small action consistently, accepting our own failure. And then he mentioned same person online and offline. So I find that when we are putting ourselves out there, it also has to be consistent. Whatever that you are writing up there, it has to link. When people look at your post, they might see, oh, this is genuinely how this person is as well. So I think the persona, our values actually come into place. For myself, I think one of the things that I am mindful of when I'm posting online is there must be a takeaway from my readers rather than just purely writing it. But for me, I also really struggle because I find that the moment I put myself online or put myself out there, I have no privacy per se. And during COVID, when I was challenging myself to just create 1-minute video on TikTok back then, it was a drag really, but I was just pushing myself out of the comfort. Because one thing that I struggle with is the judgment that I may be getting online. No matter how good intention I may have, I'm afraid of what I'm going to read or how people will come back to say. So for Eric, what would be your advice for someone like myself who is constantly struggling with that?
Number one, you have to be prepared that some people might say negative things about you or your content. It bound to happen because there are people whose life is not as good as yours and they are jealous of it, right? If somebody whose life is good, they read something they don't like, they just move on. They got no time to leave a negative remark. So sometimes when people leave negative remark, for example, I say I was rejected by Singapore Airlines for a cabin crew job when I first graduated. The person said that at least you got a chance to interview with a big airline. I say it's a big airline, but it's just a cabin crew job. It's a service job. But I can sense that the person is having a hard time. So that's what I wrote to him. I say that I can sense that you are going through a difficult period right now. He was very apologetic because I didn't attack him. So there is this group of people there, and they feel bad about themselves when they see that your life is so good. Yeah, so you need to be prepared for that. Number two is some criticism is good because sometimes your own view is wrong. And if I find that the person's view is right or more accurate than mine, I learn. So I'm happy to receive that criticism. Number three, criticism increase the engagement of your post. You know what is worse than negative criticism?
No engagement.
No reaction. Yeah. So if that's the attitude you have, then you will be okay. And also question your own intention.
I think it takes a very big heart to be able to take that step backwards to acknowledge and to notice that when someone leave a negative comment or feedback, it could be a reflection of their current situation. It really takes a lot of empathy there and self-awareness there to hold back, to regulate your own emotion and approach it with such a big heart. Lesson learned.
Yeah. So a lot of time I just say, I'm sorry to hear about your situation. That's how I reply.
It humanizes that interaction, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, I also have one negative comment on Amazon for my book. The person said, oh, it's already out there, whatever my book is saying, right? Because all the other comments are good. So for example, if there are 100 rating, all give you 4 and 5, which is good, and one give you 1, only just one negative, you will be disturbed by it. So I share that our human mind is always focusing on the negative. I wrote that, and I think the person deleted the negative rating on my post. I don't know why. I didn't say that it's bad. I just say that as a person, we are always focusing on negative. And if nobody say negative thing about your work, it means your work is not new enough. It's not impactful enough. Impactful work, new work, bound to have some people who are not for it, right? The most popular politician will still get 20 to 30% voting against him or her.
I like that idea of being open to criticism, even though it might sting a little bit, as being maybe offering a new perspective or a divergent view on the content or whatever issue you're presenting. I want to move, Samantha, I think we're moving into kind of the final stretch of the end of our interview here, but we have a couple more questions for you, Eric. I feel like we keep on talking, but our time limit is set as such. So one of the questions that we always ask our guests is around this idea of attention, right? And what are you attending to right now? It could be current projects, could be a particular issue, or
I'm writing my second book. So my first book is for early careers. My second book is for the mid to late career.
Okay.
It's called Magical Stage.
Magical Stage?
Yeah, magical stage of life.
Okay.
In life, there are 3 stages for most people. In stage 1, you are young. You have time, health, but no money. In stage 2, you're at the peak of your career. You have enough money. You still have your health, but you got no time because work takes up time and you got a family to care for. In stage 3, when you are old, retired, you have all the time in the world. You have some money, hopefully. But your health starts to decline. However, there is a magical stage between stage 2 and stage 3 where you have all 3 elements: time, health, and money. How do you reach there? How do you prolong that stage? And how do you create magic in that stage? So that's what I'm writing about.
That sounds really engaging. When can listeners expect that book to be published?
Next year. So it takes a
Next
long
year.
time to write.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Looking forward
Because
to it.
that definition of success is so subjective. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll move on to the next question. So we
Mm.
have this tradition in this season is every previous speaker will leave a question for the current speaker, and you will leave a question for our next speaker as well. So our previous speaker was Mark. He is the founder of Career Cycle. He, instead of walking, he does cycling with his clients and have career conversations. Yeah, so he has a question for you. His question is, can you share a story of how an unplanned event positively influenced your career or your life?
So it was over Chinese New Year in Hong Kong. I was still working for UBS. I've got 3 days of holiday, and I wasn't coming back to Singapore like my previous years to visit my parents. Got nothing to do. And I always wanted to blog. So I say, why don't I just write on LinkedIn? And I wrote my first LinkedIn post. At that time, I have about 200 connections. These are people who connected with me. My account was dormant since I started the account. So that one article started a chain reaction. Because of that, I keep writing. So I've been writing for 10 years every week without fail since that day. Because of that article, I was able to pivot from banking to a portfolio career. Because of that article, I improved my English, and I got to know so many people. In fact, half the people that I know that I interact with now comes via my LinkedIn. The people that I meet, whether I travel overseas or when they fly to Singapore, is via my LinkedIn. And I got to know so many industries, know so many people from different backgrounds. So that was life-changing for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Mark Franklin, our previous guest, talked about this idea of chance events, right? This idea of planned happenstance. And sometimes we can create or help foster more of these sort of chance events in our own life. And clearly, you took the initiative of that opportunity, right? Of writing that first article, perhaps not knowing where it was going to go. And subsequently, it altered the trajectory of your professional and personal life as you share. Thank you.
So before we end the session, Eric, I would like to invite you to ask our next speaker a question. What will your question be for?
I would say, what is one small action that you have taken that has a huge impact? A bit similar.
Okay. Very good question for our next speaker. I can't wait to get our next speaker on to talk about his or her story. So once again, I really sincerely thank Eric for taking your time to speak to us, to share with us so many tips and strategy, and also share with us your upcoming exciting projects.
Thank you, Samantha, and thank you, Michael, for spending time with me.
All right.
Thank you. Another successful conversation.
Yes.
What stood out for you, Samantha?
What stood out for me? I think the first thing that stood out for me was really the definition of how he defines success. And one thing that I echo is really there's nothing wrong to define success related to material means. I think that's important living in today's society, having some stability. But I think beyond that, the part about creating experience, collecting stories so that you have a lot to share at different stages of your life, I think that is exciting to me because you don't want to be saying the same thing every other day. So having the process of collecting the story, I think is very enriching. So that is something that I really like. How about you, Michael?
Yeah, the same. I like this idea of reframing success, right? And the messages that we get about success as young people might be different, right? At midlife and also later on in life. And I think his book, That Magic Stage, describes what's important developmentally across that lifespan. I like that idea of, he said that maybe earlier on in his life he wore a Rolex, right? He says, now I choose a Timex over the Rolex. He showed his Timex piece. And I think that was illustrative of what's important to him, perhaps at this point in his life. Whereas when he was a younger businessman working in financial consulting, maybe having those symbols of success, like a Rolex or a fancy car, were viewed more importantly. Related to that, he talked about this idea. I wrote this question down. I'll probably keep it in my mind or keep it posted near my computer as a helpful tool. He said, are you helping people? And that is what success is. If you can answer that question and describe how you're helping people, that's going to be almost like a compass, I think, for you in terms of success. What else? I know you were taking some notes probably as well. What else was memorable or maybe caused you to think a little bit more, Samantha?
Get me reflecting again on what is my combos. Like when he talks about his burger and his fries and his Coke, I'm just reflecting, at this current stage of my life, what would I say is my burger? What would I say is my fries and my drink at this current moment? So it really got me thinking. And I think it comes from the point of not scared or fearful or stressed about thinking about it. It comes from the point of excitement, comes from a point of, oh, maybe there's a lot more other things that I can look into or venture into.
Yeah, I think that's good. I also enjoyed his insights about the combo meal idea. And I think I shared with you and also Eric that I've used this in class for the first time this last semester, not knowing how students would respond to it. There's a popular restaurant just right off campus, and they specialize in chicken. I don't know if you have chicken fingers or chicken tenders, if that's even a thing in Singapore. But it's
We
basically
have something like that, but maybe
yeah,
not.
it's like fried chicken. And so they have these combo deals at this place. It's literally a few meters from campus. And you can order your chicken is like your main meal, right? And then you can get fries or a salad and then a Coke or lemonade. And so I walked students through this exercise. I said, imagine the last time you were at this restaurant. Most of the students, even if they hadn't been there recently, they know enough about it. It's a popular place. And then I had them talk about what's their main meal, what's the equivalent of those chicken tenders, if you will, and then the fries and the soda. So it really got students thinking about it. And this was earlier in the semester, and I thought, oh, students probably just forgot about that whole lesson. And then at the very end of the semester, like 10 weeks, 11 weeks later, students had to do these, what we call professional identity talks, where they talk a little bit about what they learned and some of their goals. There's just a 2 or 3 minute class presentation. And one of the students brought out his combo specialist meal that he did from that activity, right? So he talked about what that meant for it. And students all knew what he was talking about, right? Because it was a memorable activity, and that's gonna remain with me, and I'll probably use it again in class. The piece that I knew about that was that this combination of skills or assets and maybe even values could change every few years. And that's a good thing that we should continually, I think what he was saying there was to reevaluate our skill sets and adjust or pivot accordingly.
Indeed. And the last thing that I took away from this session was he mentioned a phrase that was from his book was share your scars, not your wounds. And it meant a lot. It speaks so much depth into the intention, the purpose, having purposeful sharing rather than just fighting for visibilities, likes, and great reactions. So that caught me. Yeah, I'm still reflecting on that point. It actually takes a while to identify that has become a scar. It's no longer a wound too.
Yeah, I appreciated that message as well. And I think it was in relation to this idea of receiving critique of your work or your ideas, especially online. And I think that can be harmful, right? He talked about the one evaluation that isn't a 4 or 5, or that sticks out, and you kind of ruminate about that, whether it's a book evaluation or a student evaluation or whatever it might be. It's easy to get caught up on the negative rather than the positive. But I liked his point about that we can learn from that, right? We should encourage criticism of our work because it's going to make us ideally stronger thinkers as we integrate and consider alternative viewpoints of our own ideas. And he also said that this idea that reactions to your work, even if it's negative, can create further engagement in your work, right? This idea of like even negative attention can be positive.
Indeed, yeah, it takes a level of self-awareness. I think it gets us really connecting with ourselves and acknowledging certain aspect that can be worked on and accept it humbly as well. So, I think that this episode has been very enriching, a lot
Yeah.
of food for thought, and I'm sure our listeners will feel the same as well. This is May, so it's a good time for reflection. So may this episode helps our clients, our listeners to have some frameworks to get started on. All
We'll look
right.
forward to our next episode soon.